even when I'm about to make a score, just harboring a little bit of resentment towards the busting up of the PGA Tour, where they're scrambling trying to find some identifiable commodity, one of whom would be Rory McIlroy. If they could get McIlroy, they get to a kind of semi-Tiger Woods kind of stature in terms of winning. It would certainly be a pleasant transformation for them than trying to sell Scotty Scheffler, who the only time he got anybody excited is when he got arrested. He was dragging that cop around like he was Randy Moss, which was a bullshit thing. I mean, when you really look at it, how does it? I understand that not everybody would recognize Scotty Scheffler, but you're a cop who's assigned to kind of monitor the traffic at the gate going into the golf course, and you're going to go ahead and give this guy a hard time and take him away in handcuffs? Get the fuck out of here. He's leading the tournament.
Yeah, exactly.
He's 2 feet from the gate. You couldn't just wave him in?
The whole thing was
He's hanging onto the car door like he's surfing. That was ridiculous.
The time. Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Edmonton White. Remarkable job to force a game 7. But that they run out of magic, digging out of holes all season. Kachuk slides it ahead. Evan Rodriguez battling Evan Bouchard. And it's wide. 30 seconds to go. Kachuk had it blocked. Skated back by McDavid. Then fired back wide of the cage by Rodriguez. Oh, what a great shift from Rodriguez. 20 seconds to go. One last gasp for Edmonton. Bouchard's pass didn't click with Draisaitl. 12 seconds to go. Florida trying to end it up against the wall, which would be fitting. 3 seconds to go. The Florida Panthers have won the Stanley Cup.
A happy day. Oh, a happy day.
It's time, really, to break out the Edwin Hawkins Singers. What a relief. Unbelievable. Morning, everybody. We're champions. Unbelievable. Unreal. The Florida Panthers staving off infamy. There is so much conversation, Lubie, and let's face it, we've had this debate many times. Good morning, everybody, by the way. Jeff DeForest, Mike Lubitz, with you on what is a day of celebration here in South Florida. I don't know how widespread it'll be. Everybody will be jumping on the bandwagon now, and I really feel great for all those fans over the 30 years who have invested. Imagine, I don't know how many original season ticket holders there are that go all the way back to the first year. I would imagine there are some. Right, they used to track this every year. Edwin Pope was one of those guys before he checked out many years ago that they would talk about and say, well, there are like 6 people in America that have been to every single Super Bowl. So I would also think that there are some people that actually were season ticket holders from the origin of the franchise 30 years ago that finally had a chance to celebrate yesterday and last night as the Panthers staved off infamy. I think, which was the bigger story? We've debated this over the years, Louie. We had a conversation with it. Dave Hyde finally convinced me. Dave Hyde of the Sun Sentinel, who Jim Sarney sent me a couple of things that he had already written. What's great about the newspaper business now, you don't have to wait for yesterday's news tomorrow. And now that it's online, Hyde had already published his thoughts on the Stanley Cup championship garnered by the Florida Panthers last night, and characterized it brilliantly. But Hyde convinced us a while back, Louis, did he not, that we were always under the impression that selling negativity was the way to go in this sports talk radio business. That you wanted your teams to lose every game. In fact, I had to fight this off, an inner conflict within myself last night, because I don't know what would have been the better story. The rewarding of the franchise, finally, after 30 years, Vinny Viola comes in. He makes a lot of bold moves. He brings in Bill Zito. He finally gets rid of the dead weight that was Dale Talon. With all due respect to his long legacy as an executive in the National Hockey League, he wasn't doing shit while he was here. Nothing that was actually going to result in any kind of a title anytime soon. We would have gone our entire lifetimes without seeing what happened last night, and that was the Panthers hoisting the Stanley Cup. And even if you hated the team, Lubie, and you were not a fan of any South Florida team, you had to just sort of feel some kind of vicarious thrill watching those players and what winning the Cup means to them. So that was great last night. Unbelievable. 2-1 victory. They hang on. It was life and death. You thought Edmonton was putting on enough of a rush to tie the game up, and we were looking at maybe double, triple overtime. The drama would have just continued into the middle of the night. Want to get a little lonely in the middle of the night, and you would have thought, wow, You fall asleep. Isn't that one of those deals too, where you fall asleep in the second overtime and then wake up just as the other team scores? And you're like, fuck. But by the slimmest of margins, man, I mean, what a competitive Stanley Cup that turned out to be. So many things to say about the game. But I was thinking we were going to have to fend off the thought that what was the biggest choke prior to this? And most people were pointing to 1942 and the Toronto Maple Leafs coming back from a 3-0 deficit the last time it happened, and the only time it happened in the Stanley Cup final against the Detroit Red Wings. So, I mean, you're talking about what? 1942, 58 plus 24? 82 years? Is that the quick math on that? 82 years. It's been since something like this happened. And you don't want to be the punchline on the end of that joke.
No.
There were many reasons to believe that was going to be the case, not the least of which was the overwhelming confidence that the media was suddenly showing on the side of the Florida Panthers last night. Sarnia kept sending me a text. Well, Barkley's got the Panthers in the under. Portnoy's on the Panthers tonight, even though he stood to win $1 million somehow and saw 150,000 go up in smoke. I don't know that the money matters to him at this stage because
he had. There's no way he didn't. I mean,
you would have to. Yeah,
he was like, "Fuck it." Like the fact that the Oilers, and look, the Oilers were a good team all year, but the coach came in the middle of the year. They started 2-9-1. I've now found out they weren't expected to be in the championship. So to actually have them winning it,
they fired their coach after like 13 games.
There's no way you didn't hedge. I mean, like, there's no way.
Yeah. Momentum standpoint, it was all Edmonton. They had won 3 in a row and just blown the Panthers off the ice for the most part in those games. You could have made a case that the Panthers could have won that game 5, but nonetheless, they didn't, and they had to head back to Edmonton where they got stomped on again and probably had their weakest performance. Even though the 8-1 game was... You might have looked at that and thought, wow, aberration city, and it got out of hand. They had to bring in the backup goalie, and Bobrovsky didn't have it. But you were of the frame of mind, Lubie, that Bobrovsky had completely lost it. That if you had shown him the big E on the eye chart from 3 feet away, you would not have been able to identify what letter of the alphabet that was. And that the Panthers were doomed. And this literally what was going to be the biggest choke since Mama Cass choked on that ham sandwich, which now is in dispute. Is that story bogus? Did she not die from choking on a ham sandwich? Was that a cover-up for some drug or alcohol overdose that she experienced? Mama Cass.
I don't know.
Mama's in the Pampas.
I've heard.
I'll never forget that because the ironies are just there. I know it's probably cruel to even think of things like this at a time where you should be talking about a celebration. But the idea that this sort of grossly, you would have to say that Mama Cass, if you've seen pictures of her, Lubie, I know you weren't a fan of the Mamas and the Papas because you weren't around when, imagine this, folk singing was actually popular at the time. You had Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez, all of these people were making big money. The Mamas and the Papas were a great pop group. All the leaves are brown. California Dreamin' was a tremendous song. And Mama Cass, as a symbol of obesity, was standing out. And the irony that she would choke to death while slugging down a ham sandwich. Who makes a ham sandwich anymore? We'll have to get into this with Mayo a little bit later on.
I like ham and cheese.
Are you ever inclined to just take a piece of ham and throw it on white bread with some mustard or mayonnaise? There was a time I used to enjoy that. But, I mean, with today's sophistication in the culinary world, is anybody eating like a straight-up ham and cheese sandwich on white? Any demand for that whatsoever?
I like ham and cheese. We'll make it on white. I don't know. We're simple people at times. So, yes, once Shirley and I do like a ham and cheese sandwich.
You do a ham and cheese on white bread.
Yes, it's not often.
Rye, I guess, would be more appropriate. No,
if I had rye bread, yes, we'd probably lean rye. I don't tend to just have rye bread.
Unbelievable. But, yeah, I mean, so you're trying to figure out how you're going to define this. I mean, how you're going to characterize if they lose 4 straight games and lose the Stanley Cup. And sure enough, we don't have to deal with that. Now Hyde was saying that winning sells far more than losing. I'm not sure that's the case. I mean, I always thought that losing really was the thing that defined sports talk radio for the many, many years that I was doing it, that you were far better off if your team dropped a game because then everybody would be calling in and demanding the head of the coach. You were calling for all the staff to be fired if they had lost last night's game. So on the basis maybe of one goal, and now you did have one clank off the post early in the game for Edmonton, and then late in the game, did it not seem like they were destined to get that game-tying goal as you were watching them swarm the net there, and
Did
seemed like the Panthers went into a
really-
little bit of a shell in the third period. No?
Look, I don't know, because they were talking about they went that time with 8 minutes without a shot. And they definitely weren't bringing the aggression offensively that they had done most of the game, but they weren't allowing a ton of opportunities either. But there were the two instances. The one time where it was just like 18 people in front of the fucking net, and it's like, okay, a puck's going in here.
Guys are falling into the net. Both teams, players are in the net. No puck, right?
The one where he was laying down, and Bobrovsky never got up. He's
No
just
stick.
rotating around on his ass.
How did that stay out? Yeah, I mean, how did they not score there? And you're thinking if they score, they're probably going to go on and win the game, Edmonton, if they find a way to tie this up. Because the Reinhardt goal, that seemed kind of improbable, too. Skinner was making those stops the entire postseason. And this one goes in right under his armpit.
Yeah.
Short-sighted, goal. And he thought there wasn't a whole lot of room there. I don't know if his vision was suddenly blocked because it seemed like a Panther player was in Montour or somebody was sliding by in front of the net when that shot went in. But you weren't expecting that to happen there, although that seems to be, in hockey, how many times you see it? A team's putting immense pressure on the offensive end, and it looks like they're destined to score. This was in the second period, and after staving off complete disaster and keeping the puck out of net, the other team gets on some kind of a rush, and sure enough, they ended up getting the game-winning goal. So great stuff. Paul Maurice, the French Joe Philbin, wow, turned out to be just a brilliant guy there. I don't know that did he rely on the Blutarski speech, you think, before the game? He really was pretty cool. I mean, I like seeing this in a coach. He was a coach that had complete and utter 100% faith in his players, which he expressed after the game. And even after the 3 hideous losses, he kept saying the same thing. He basically equated it to one of his earlier statements when he was doing an in-game interview, and the Panthers were down 1-0, and he said to the reporter, that nobody's been arrested yet, so I think we're okay. Maintained his cool all throughout in a sport that could it be any more psychotic watching that type of game, Lubie, with everything that was at stake, including a bout with infamy, a date with infamy, which I don't know. I mean, would that have given us more to talk about than this one Stanley Cup championship? If you were going to do shows here in town about sports over the next 30 years, would you have been better off having that as a reference point? Can you believe it? The biggest choke in sports history. Or celebrating the fact that after 30 years, they finally figured it out. Vinny Viola happens to have a little bit of a Midas touch, does he not? The owner of the team. He goes into horse racing. He ends up with Always Dreaming and wins a Kentucky Derby, one of his very first ventures. He buys a sports franchise. Does he own some European soccer club also, Vinny Viola? Does he have any other sporting interests in terms of ownership? I want to say no to that. Wasn't that a common thing now? That successful sports owners in the United States ended up buying some European soccer club. We saw that with the owners of Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? The Glazers, they got into soccer, and we've seen this kind of transformation take place or transition. But I think Vinny Viola, wow. Came in here on a mission and managed to make some ball moves, including finally getting rid of Dale Talon, bringing in this Bill Zito guy, who was an emotional mess afterwards, Lubie. Did you see Bill Zito? He was in tears for like an hour and a half after the game. He couldn't stop crying.
Look, it was him. He's the only one that when it got crazy, I did not blame. Like Maurice, you had to sort of question because and I didn't get to, we were talking about it on the other thing, and then we had technical issues, but Rodriguez actually is the one that put it exactly the way I wanted someone to explain it to me, because the way, and look, Andy actually got so used to the way the last 3 games was that even though they dominated last night, he's talking about how the Panthers dominated that game. The Oilers had 5 minutes in the first period, and that's where they got that fucking stupid ass goal. And the Panthers dominated the rest of the first period. They dominated the entire second period, and they dominated the first 6 to 7 minutes of the third period. From 14
third period, though, you had to be a little nervous, Libby.
From 14 minutes to like 5 minutes. 14 minutes to 5 minutes, the Oilers just had an onslaught.
It was relentless.
And it was like, okay, this is where they tied. I didn't think they'd win it, actually. It was weird because it was sort of the Panthers. I don't know, they went into a shell, but I didn't mind it because the odd rushes were the only way I thought they'd score. Like Bobrovsky had gotten so bad at odd rushes, either 2-on-1 or 1-on-1 or 1-on-none, that they were going to score every time. But if they had stopped those, I thought they would not score. I didn't say it out loud, but inside of me, I was like, just don't allow the fucking rushes. Because even when the puck would just fucking sit there and went back to the first 3 games, they were getting every loose puck. They were getting after. McDavid had no room to work. Draisaitl had no room to work. Hyman had no room to work. And that's where they get the majority of their action. So it was like, okay, don't let a fucking odd man rush. Even in those 8 minutes that were fucking ridiculous, it was all action at the net. And for some reason, Bobrovsky is great in those circumstances. Those seems like where you should allow the most fucking goals. He actually is like a fucking cat. He's literally everywhere in those circumstances. It's the odd man rushes when he has a clean look at a guy. He can block the whole fucking net, and guys never score there. That he got to the point for the last 4 games where they scored every time. Like anytime they had an odd man rush, they were scoring.
He may as well have gone to the corner and had a smoke.
Yes, it was like there was an empty net. Honestly, an empty net wouldn't have been any worse. So it was like, you can't allow that. Like they got to the point where if you notice from that first goal on, they were starting to leak back. They were doing the forward checking, but there was always one dude that was like, okay, you would see they never give up on an offensive possession early. They were doing it from the middle of the first period on. And it's what I wanted them to do. The last 2 games was just let someone watch them. God damn it. Just let someone watch them and take them out. If they score, they score, but Bobrovsky can't stop them. He's doing everything wrong. Like you're supposed to just sit. If you watch Skinner, he doesn't follow the guys. He keeps his base and stays big. So he gives them no room to work. Bobrovsky's going out and he's going down and he's falling. And he's like, dude, you're giving him the goddamn net. Like, so even in that,
what they scored like on 5 straight breakaways or something.
Yes. So I was like, okay, even that 8 minutes, it was annoying because then people like Andy are like, they dominated. Yes, that 8-minute period was a mad dash and was stressful as fuck. But it's funny, the Panthers seem to play their best in that. Like, it's rare that they actually allow a goal in that. So I actually didn't think they'd lose. I thought they'd allow one. It was so ridiculous, the activity that the Oilers were getting. I figured they'd give up a goal. But I didn't think they'd lose. I was like, oh, we're going to go to fucking overtime. All you idiots predicted.
It looked like OT. It had OT written all over it. I was going to bet on overtime, and I would have been very disappointed to lose if I had made that wager. I think you could have got a pretty decent price if you had predicted that the game was going to go to overtime. It certainly looked that way. But thank God. I mean, so are we better off? I always enjoy the celebration. Hyde convinced us that this was better for business, that people are more into it when your team is doing well. And this used to be one of my complaints about the local newspapers here in South Florida, where they would drop coverage of basketball and hockey pretty much 100%. They would just drop out of it after your team was eliminated or wasn't in the postseason. Certainly, you don't see a lot of baseball coverage you don't see any coverage in the local newspapers anymore. But there was a big tendency that when your team was out of it, to pay no more attention to the championship run, as spectacular as it is. And maybe that's why it was somewhat of an education to see how difficult it was to actually accomplish winning the Stanley Cup, which was mentioned throughout all of the post-game ceremonies. Very heartening, though, Lubie. Now, there were people even complaining about Luongo being the guy to beat the Drums.
I was.
You weren't alone in that. I saw other posts on social media. I mean, how insane are you fucking people? What's wrong with having a Roberto Luongo beat the Drums? Oh, well, he lost Game 7 with Vancouver. Like, that's 100 years ago.
It wasn't the loser thing. I wasn't. I wanted a winner just because they had gotten such into the loser mentality the last 3 games that I just wanted someone who won a lot. But I didn't care about that. It was someone that was such a big figure that it would wake people up. Like, that's what I wanted. Now,
and he did a great job, though.
That's it.
Beat the shit out of those Drums.
The way Luongo came in,
yes.
I shut the fuck up. I meant to go. I was wrong even before the game because he's always been mild-mannered and reserved. And
yes.
It was like Dan Campbell did fucking 10 lines. Like, he fucking lost it. And I was ready to go. I'm like, okay, if they don't go out there and hit them in the fucking mouth after this shit. Yeah. He was a fucking madman. He was yelling and screaming, and he didn't need any help. He was beating the living shit out of that fucking drum.
Oh, he was Ginger Baker plus.
Like, he wants this. I'm like, if they play 10th as much as he wants this,
yeah,
we may win this fucking game.
That was great. Thank God for that. It's funny, though. I mean, the minutia that people start picking apart there as if it was going to make some difference in the outcome of the game. But certainly the crowd was inspired. A surprising number of Edmonton people made their way into the arena. Again, Lubie, what is this? This town without pity. We are just absolutely ridiculous when it comes to allowing. It was almost like that Philadelphia Knicks series, wasn't it? And yeah, you would think, oh, wow, I mean, the odds that Edmonton is going to have any fans here in South Florida, maybe what? Are there 2 Edmonton Oiler fans in South Florida on a general basis?
The prices were like the flights and price is probably cheaper than anything they'd ever get at a game. So that's what happened. They made it like, if you notice the whole series, it wasn't like that. But last night they made it a pilgrim. It felt like they made a pilgrimage.
How did they get these seats? They were willing to pay any amount of money. You Panther fans are pathetic if you were selling your seats. Although, do the Panthers have some deal? I mean, is this an odd thing, or is this something that is universal now, or getting to that point in sports where the seats are immediately available on a secondary market after they're released by the team? Is that possible, Lubie? I'm not sure I totally understand the dynamic here about SeatGeek being a partner with the Florida Panthers. Are they hoots together where they release the tickets and immediately they're on the open fucking market?
Yeah,
Get out of here.
Because when they release it, it has to be face value. So I think it's gotten to the point where they realize, fuck, look, it's like all these, everything else.
And they get a piece of the overcharge on the secondary market?
Realize, all right, fuck it. If you can't beat them, join them.
Wow.
Let's make our own off. And a lot, I think that's what a lot of.
Should we start a boycott of the franchise now, even though they just won the cup?
I'm sure not the only one.
We haven't even had the parade yet. And we're going to advocate for a boycott because of this ridiculous treatment of the fans. A slap shot in the face.
I'm sure every franchise does. I can't. But look, Rodriguez actually said the one thing I was wondering what, like he said in the interview after the game. He's like, look, they're like, so what happened with what happened with this series? Something that ilk. And he's like, look. We really wanted to win this fucking thing. And he didn't curse, obviously. We really wanted to win.
No, there was a lot of cursing.
We started pressing. And we started trying to score too much and lean. And I don't want to say lean, but leak into the offense. And we weren't playing our defensive game. Defense is what we're known for. We're not playing our defensive game. And it's funny. Once we got to game 7, the pressure for some reason went off of us. Like it's game 7 now. It's like, screw it.
They're forever confusing the issue about who is the pressure on. Whenever that question comes up, that's a fabled sports talk question. Hey, who's the pressure on? The pressure's on both teams, no doubt, all the way through. It was on Edmonton when they were losing the first 3 games. It was on them when they were winning the next 3. It was on both teams equally last night. You see the meaning of it. I mean, that's one thing that you can't help but be touched by when you see the meaning of winning the Stanley Cup to these players. And you also had to get the impression, both before and especially after in the post-game ceremonies, what a decent, easy to root for bunch of guys that these Florida Panthers turned out to be, and very eloquent and well-spoken for the most part. And on top of that, I mean, as corny as this is, Lubie, and it probably applies in hockey maybe more so than even in football or any other sport, where you have guys that are going out there to execute essentially a bloodbath on one of the most challenging physical endeavors that you could ever get involved in. And it did seem like the team unity, and that was talked about a lot. You're going to hear that kind of soapy stuff after a championship is won. I love these guys. I love playing with them.
And they all love each other. Yeah.
But did it not seem very genuine with this particular Florida Panther team? And then you had the other thing in play where they had been knocking on the door last year. Not the same team. What did they have? 9 new guys, Paul Maurice was saying?
He said 9. And 2 of them came in this season. Tarasenko. And I didn't realize Oposo, too, who was huge until the last 3 games. They brought his ass back, which was smart. That was one of the moves I didn't get. Cousins is fine, but Oposo was actually playing well. It wasn't his fault. It was Forsling stopped playing well, and he woke up again last night. Look, Forsling, Verhaeghe, and Reinhart were keys to the entire run, including the 3 wins. Yes. And those 3 guys were fucking nowhere to be found. Those 3 games, they all were huge last night. For some reason, the one stat that was interesting, and Sarny was sending me shit all day, and it wasn't bothering me. I was really resigned that they'd lose. Like, I wasn't saying that to trick the gods of sports. I really thought they'd lose. To me, you'd win in game 5 or 6. Why would you wait for game 7? I mean, the Oilers were just dominating the shit out of them in those 3 games. So it was like the series is over. And then Sarny, of all the negative stats, Sarny brought up the stat that they showed last night. Maurice is 4-0 in game 7s. Trends are stupid, right? You and I sort of are hem and haw about trends.
I thought too that I like Sean McDonough, and I like the fact that he's sort of understated by comparison to most of the screamers, and he usually does a pretty thorough job. But who was feeding him all of those stats about, well, this is the second time in the third period that a team has come back? What was it, me, or was that starting to get? I mean, it's tough enough to call a game as it is, and I don't know that you need the guy to announce every player that touches the puck every time it changes. The player that has the puck, you don't necessarily have to start. Yeah, you name it. I mean, it would go crazy, but. And he threw a lot of that stuff in, but was it not a little overboard after a while?
I muted a lot of the game because they were doing a lot of McDavid's the best.
All in his bullshit statistical stuff.
Nothing last night. They're like, McDavid has to come on now. I'm like, maybe he's not gonna. Remember, there was fucking 3 other games he did nothing, and game 6 he didn't do much. He just had
Draisaitl appeared to be off his game. Not just because his statistics were not there, but he looked a little bit slow, didn't he? By comparison to what you're normal. I mean, and all of a sudden I'm an expert on Leon Draisaitl, but I had seen him during the season. This guy was always dangerous. I mean, just absolutely dangerous.
He didn't score the entire series.
Yeah,
they said it was
no goals. That had to be significant. You hold back.
Score doesn't get a goal. I look, but the fact that Maurice was 4-0 in game 7s, I was like, that's an interesting stat. That's the kind of stat that you actually can sort of hold on to. As annoying as it is that he's been this sort of same way the whole time.
His epitome of calm was to be greatly respected in any coach. I don't know how he was able to do that because most people would have been going out of their mind. I mean, this is a guy that's been coaching forever, has no Stanley Cups. That was one of the knocks on him. It's the old thing about never won a championship. I don't know that he had the greatest of teams, Paul Maurice. He's won a lot of games. They kept bringing up the stat, another McDonough thing, which I guess was relevant, but I don't know that we needed to hear it 50 times. That he had coached more games in the NHL than anybody else that had never won a Stanley Cup. Yeah. All right, so we get that. He was in a position to win it last year with a team that didn't have a whole lot of expectation going into the postseason. And what we thought after a couple of series that the Panthers were playing the best hockey in the Stanley Cup postseason, East or West, and thought that they had an excellent chance to win the whole thing. And it only got perilous because I don't know that they got careless. That was kind of interesting. What Rodriguez had to say that they probably blew it themselves by pressing a little bit when they got to the 3-0 lead.
Well, no, look, after you allow a team to get, remember, the 8 goals bother me. And within that game, you saw it. Look, if they had played their defensive style, they may have given up 4 or 5 goals in that game, but they would have kept it at 5. They were playing a different brand. And then you saw that team score 8. So in their minds, they're like, fuck, we're going to have to score a lot to beat this team. No, don't let them score. You'll get your stupid ass goals.
They got back to their game. They really did last night. That was what we were used to seeing from the Florida Panthers. That style of play, anyway. I mean, they were aggressively forechecking early in the game. Paid some dividends, and then I thought late in the game they did get a little overly protective, and might have gotten lucky to prevail and have that 2-1 lead hold up all throughout the third period. But wow, I mean, you couldn't have asked for any more excitement. Just absolutely fantastic. I'm happy for the fans that have been paying their money for 30 years, going to the various arenas there, whether it was the Merritt Bank Center, as it's now known, or going back to the old Miami Arena that stuck with it. They were diehard hockey fans, and they deserved the chance to celebrate a championship. And it was a spectacular celebration. So
the game was great.
Off the hook, man. No more Mama Cass, my man. Pass me the ham sandwich, kid. Not afraid to take a bite out of that thing and see if I can't survive without having to have somebody administer the Heimlich maneuver. But that would have been one of the all-time classic chokes. No, Libby? I mean, wow.
Oh, no. Again, I hate saying the worst ever because you don't think about this and that. But to me, it's as bad as you've seen in a championship series. Again, the Red Sox-Yankees was a pseudo
Red Sox-Yankees turned around completely
the Red
from
Sox
the 3-0.
went on to annihilate the Cardinals. So it was really the Yankees were the hill they had to get over. And that 3-0, it felt ridiculous. It had never happened. And even within that series, every game they'd win, you're like, yeah, but they're not going to win the series.
Yeah.
Like, in a championship series, this was as dreadful as anything you'd ever seen.
That was like an old 15-round fight, though, that whole third period where you were wondering how are these guys still standing, man. Essentially a hockey version of the Thrill in Manila. It was great. All right, well, we're going to come back with more. We'll get into it. There were a bunch of other things going on, but I think this totally eclipses anything that you could possibly want to dwell on in the world of sport today. Although, I don't know, has Jim sent us a criticism about not talking about the rhythmic gymnastics Olympic trials? He was full of useful information last night. It was better than listening to McDonough with all those stats. I mean,
Yeah, they were getting annoying.
Enough already.
And,
Please.
and it was always a negative Panther stat. I was like, okay, I would like mute it whenever they would show a graphic. 0 and 157, 4 and 160.
He's the youngest guy to have an assist in a game following one where he had 2 goals in a series that was tied at 3-3. I mean, it's like, please, enough. You're driving me out of my fucking mind, McDonough. Normally an extremely professional guy. Not that he didn't conduct himself in a professional fashion, but who was forcing those stats on him?
I don't know.
Just because some director is yelling in your ear, talk about the fact that nobody has done it. I mean, you don't have to do it, right? You could figure, hey, so what if this is the last time I work for you, you fucking prick? I'm not saying that. I don't want to talk about smoking Joe Frazier right now. All right, we're coming back with more in a moment here on the show. Mike Lubie Lubitz, a very fired up Mike Lubie Lubitz. I don't know why. What is wrong with Mayo? He always wants to hold you accountable for something you said.
No, look,
we hold Mayo accountable for all of the bullshit that he's. No.
That one comment turned out, and I said it. Even when I said it, I said I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see them winning a championship with Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
But everything else I said was right. Literally, even in that game, he gave up a stupid, it's a breakaway is not easy to stop. But the Panthers didn't score one breakaway the entire series. The entire playoffs I think they scored like one breakaway. The whole playoffs, they had scored like 5 or 6 straight breakaways. Like, you can't tell me that's how it is. Like, I've watched a lot of hockey. Usually you think the guy's going to score and then nothing happens. The guy hits it into his stomach. Like,
the penalty shot used to be almost a guaranteed goal back in the day.
It
was rarely invoked, rarely called. And then we started to see penalty shots as a matter of routine when they brought the shootout into hockey. And I'm amazed every time I watch one of these shootouts that the goalies stop anything, aren't you? I mean, you're talking about a guy getting started at center ice. I mean, it used to be some guy like Bobby Hull who would just take a slap shot from center ice and would go in. But you thought, wow, a player's got a complete advantage here to the point where it should work, 90% of the time, unless the guy misses the net. So I'm surprised when they make those stops, but Bobrovsky stopped nothing.
To stop none of them.
Nothing. It's incredible.
So you're like,
what a good guy, though. I mean, did you see his post-game interview? It's hard not to like him, Lubie. I know you've been all over this guy.
Well, he stresses me out because he'll give up the stupidest fucking goal from like the blue line, but then he'll stop 6 shots in a row from like every angle.
That mad scramble when he was laying on his back on the ice with no stick, flopping around like a flounder that just been brought into a boat on Long Island somewhere. And you're thinking, hey, what is that, a fluke or a flounder? I'm not sure. Looks big enough to be a fluke. That was great. A real wild entertainment last night. I mean, could you possibly have watched that game without even a rooting interest and not been somewhat on the edge of your seat?
No, there was action. That was the one thing. There was, whereas soccer can get boring, it was 2-1, but it did not feel like
the tension level is not there in soccer like that.
Well, there was just
constant pressure. Yes. Constant pressure. I mean, when they have those exchanges at center ice, sometimes you're looking going, what the fuck is this? I mean, they're just going back and forth, aimlessly wandering around. But in soccer, it takes too much. This changes in an instant, and all of a sudden you go from a non-threatening situation to being under immense pressure. And it happens very quickly. And as we saw, I mean, the deciding goal in the championship this year came about after the Panthers looked like they were certain to be scored upon.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is the whole second period, the Panthers pretty much dominated, except for there was one really aggressive, annoying time.
And that was a wild possession.
Sitting there, and Kulikov just happens to hit it to a dude, and that starts a goal.
Unreal, yeah. Okay. That was great. It's a day of celebration. No more Mama Cass talk. Wow, I had my whole Mama Cass thing worked up for today.
Oh, good.
I was thinking, geez, this poor fat broad. I mean, I had to choke on a sandwich. How ridiculous. She couldn't have, just checked out by normal means. But, then you remember our friend Indy Carr Rubin?
Yes, of course.
He was disputing the circumstances surrounding Mama Cass's death. Says that was a bullshit story. Is that really true? That it was like a drug and alcohol thing?
I would think.
That they just covered it up by saying she choked on a fucking ham sandwich?
A folk singer from like the 60s and 70s it seems more feasible. She died from
Yeah,
alcohol.
it would be possible she was experimenting with some drugs that might have been deemed to be dangerous by the FDA. All right, we're coming back with more in a moment here. Day of celebration on the show. Mike Lubie Lubitz, it's okay to be wrong. I don't know that you would have been. It looked like, wow, I mean, the reversal of form there of Bobrovsky in this game was sensational. The Conn Smythe thing, does that bother you,
He
Lubie? We'll
deserved
get
it.
into
Yeah,
that a little bit.
McDavid didn't look. Then they need to make a Finals MVP
It's
award.
only a six-time a losing team player has won the Conn Smythe,
Well,
but
look,
the connotation that it includes the entire playoffs kind of throws, a very gray cloud over the giving out and earning the award.
This year, the run that McDavid had, the totality of the playoffs, was historical.
But Bobrovsky also, I mean, you can remember those 3 games where he sucked, but for the most part, I mean, the guy was keeping the Panthers alive through the first 3 rounds as well as winning this one.
McDavid sucked for 5 games. Like that sort of gets. He had back-to-back 4-point games, something even Gretzky didn't do. Yeah, in all other 5 games, he did nothing. He did nothing in those 5 games.
Did Bettman have a bet on McDavid to win the thing? Because he was the favorite.
I know he was shaking.
He was shitting in his pants while he was out there.
I know. I think he had
Imagine you're the team after 30 years wins a Stanley Cup, and you have to announce that the other team's player was the most valuable.
Yeah, that's my problem. It was not only. It wasn't like
a guy who got shut down too. Well, basically, if he had done anything in the last couple of games, they would have won the series.
But Bobrovsky wasn't good for those 3 games, but it was really 2. He was horrendous in the 8-goal game. He was not good in the game where they got down 4-1. Well, those 3 games. He wasn't good for those 3 games, if not bad, fine. But the other 4, he was great, and he was great all playoffs. And they won, and they were at home in front of the home.
And allowed 1 goal under immense pressure in the game last night.
Well, they said he allowed 1 goal or less in 3 games. Only Waugh and Brodeur had done that ever. Yeah. Like when you have
I'm pissed. I was going to bet him at 4-1. I'm pissed. I lost my mind bet on that.
I thought it was dumb. Like once McDavid, look, he had the back-to-back 4-point games. He had a great playoff run. I was like, fuck it, even if they lose. But then he did nothing the last 2 games. So, okay, he did nothing the last 2 games. And Bobrovsky in Game 7, outside of that stupid-ass goal, played fantastic. Like
he was a deciding factor in the decisive game of the series.
And McDavid wasn't.
And the championship run. And was great before that, just like McDavid was. So.
And they won. So it was like,
come on, Gary Bettman. What the fuck was that? No wonder he was shaking.
McDavid played amazing. McDavid was fantastic. Bobrovsky earned that Conn Smythe.
Did he get hit in the head with a puck or something at some point? Does he have Parkinson's?
Parkinson's. That's why I'm not trying to.
I wouldn't wish this on anybody, honestly. I mean, it's a horrible thing. We've seen it. Many of the people I've known in boxing ended up being badly afflicted with Parkinson's, including the most famous of all, Muhammad Ali. Freddie Roach, many others. So some guys that you see after you had covered them years ago, and you come by them and across them again, and they got the shakes, and you're thinking, "Wow, this is fucking sad." But wow, Bettman, did you see him? I don't want to get like Donald Trump here making fun of something. I don't mean to poke fun. I just seriously was worried there was something wrong with the guy.
I was like, well, that makes sense why the refs were literally just making up penalties throughout the whole series. Bettman had put a ridiculous amount of money on those.
On Everton. They didn't call much in this game last night. People could dispute that tripping penalty by Kachuk, which that was, a tough call to make.
Guy's laying there. What do you want him to do?
The high sticks, I mean, you can't ignore those. I liked who got hit with the high stick, and he was like looking for blood. And then they showed him with his helmet off, and there was a little bit of blood.
There was blood. That's what was annoying. I'm like, he was fucking bleeding.
He's got his hand up his face. He's putting it in his ass. He's trying to find blood anywhere. Hey, look at this. There's blood on my stool. He wouldn't have cared if he had been diagnosed with cancer, as long as he was bleeding, and they got the extra 3 minutes. Hey, we're going to come back with more in a moment. Now that. The time. It's 8:41.
Here, let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched, steaks hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
From the newly renovated sports bar to the beautiful bayside views captured at the Tiki Bar, Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill has it all. Located at mile marker 104, the Big Chill also offers waterfront dining while experiencing breathtaking sunset views of the Florida Keys. It's simply the hottest spot in the Keys to cool off. That's Jimmy Johnson's Big Chill at mile marker 104 in Key Largo. For more information, call today at 305-453-9066.
The world, I mean, if my point was ever going to be embellished and going to be proven true, the world has gotten me sugar now.
Grab a bagel and a schmear, plus some Defo and Lubie. Welcome back to the Defo Show.
Dreisaitl down to our right. Forsling in the corner. He'll trilling. Fans to their feet. Bouchard has missed Dreisaitl. Down to our right. Forsling in the corner. He'll try and hold this. 10 seconds left. 2-1 Panthers. A dream 30 years in the making is a reality. Whoa! The Florida Panthers have won the Stanley Cup. Lord Stanley is coming home. You always will have a place in South Florida. Oh my God! The Panthers have won the Stanley Cup for the first time in franchise history. Yeah! Start the celebration, South Florida. The Panthers have done it. Stanley Cup champions!
Was that approach popularized by the Mad Dog, Jim Mandich, Screaming Color Man?
When I heard it, until I didn't know who it was, I'm like, oh, just let him finish the call, guy.
Bill Lindsay does the radio color.
The fact that it's Lindsay, and he literally had that goal that was the most iconic moment for the Panthers until now. The fact that he's was on TV with Goldie all those years. The fact that he's been within and around this organization
deserves to go ape
for years. I actually don't mind. It's okay to me. It's like when William Floyd loses it over Deckerhoff when they won their last title. I normally make fun of that guy, but because it was Floyd and he had been around the program for fucking decades, it was like he was a fan in the moment. So
plus, you got to figure it's a radio call of hockey. I mean, I don't know how many people are tuning into the radio for that. Maybe with the Stanley Cup final, would you be inclined? I'm not sure anybody does that, right? Even though McDonough, who as I said, I really like Sean McDonough.
Does a good job on the action. Just between action, I had to mute it.
they were just feeding him too much of this bullshit where you're constantly using bizarre quantifying stats to quantify something that nobody gives a fuck about. And that was constant throughout. Some of it's interesting. All right. I mean, look, like I said, if you're doing play-by-play and all you're doing is it was the old Gus Johnson thing when he used to do boxing. And as a guy that aspired to be a boxing announcer and actually got a chance to do some at a high level professionally and got to know people in the business. And what you want is the people in the business to have respect for what you're doing. And when I'd hear Gus Johnson going, Smith, Jones, Smith, Jones, Smith, I wanted to throw up. I mean, it offended my announcing sensibilities to hear somebody just butcher a job that you aspired to do. And you're thinking, my God, Don Dunphy's got to be rolling over in his grave listening to this bullshit. So it would be impractical to just constantly announce who had the puck and every pass. It would get annoying. It's the same thing. You're watching the game. And while a lot of people figure that you have to embellish hockey calls a little bit because nobody knows what the fuck they're watching, if a basketball announcer did the same thing where every touch of the ball, they had to identify the player and whatever, and then throw in like a bunch of these historical perspective stats, it would be really, really tiring. And that's kind of what it was. But I don't know that anybody would be inclined to. I'm not even sure you could pick up a WQAM at night in Broward County.
No, there's no way.
That's scratch and it just it sounds like a record skipping, doesn't it? When you turn on the radio here, that was always a problem with AM radio during the nighttime signals. As we know, Lubie, remember we were doing that 7 to 10 shift for a while at WINZ, and you couldn't hear the station outside of the parking lot when the nighttime powering down took place. But interesting all the way around, and it's just great stuff. The franchise appears to be in really good hands. You would have to think. And you would also have to think, I don't know. I mean, what would you do? They do have issues with free agents coming up and some decisions to make that I would imagine would be rather critical if they're going to continue. And then I'm at the point where with this franchise, especially where if they never did shit again, I'm happy.
Look, I'm fine. Look, the fact that after all that, they found a way to go and win is astounding. But again, it's why we're here. Zito, look, I'm sure every move won't be gold, but he does enough that it makes up for whatever would be bad. So I presume that whatever has to be done, he'll get done. And because again, he's brought in guys the last 2 years that had questions, like Rodriguez. I didn't realize Rodriguez had been in like in the minors for years. Same thing with
a lot of great stories. I mean, just terrific stuff.
So, even for Verhaeghe, who had one, was the only guy that had one on their team. He wasn't a star for the Lightning. Like, he was a lot more involved for this team than was the Lightning. Like,
Verhaeghe was a role player, apparently.
The moves he made, all of them, even getting Oposo and Terashenko, it's like, okay, so if they have to lose someone, there's a reason. Like, good franchises don't keep everyone.
No.
Franchises have guys at the top that they trust to keep the right players. And finally, we have a second franchise in this city or in this region, because it's a different city. This is Broward's championship. In this region that we trust. I trust Bill Zito. Like, I even when it got annoying, I said it repeatedly, he's the only one I was not blaming, because it wasn't the roster. It wasn't the talent. It was what Rodriguez said. They, instead of just worrying about defense and getting points off of that, they totally switched the way they played.
Stop playing their so-called game. That was the point of emphasis for Paul Maurice also. And he said that was his message to the team was like, look, just get back to doing what got you here. Dance with the girl that you brung, and you'll be okay. And they essentially did that in the game last night. It was great.
They did.
A lot of fun, Lubie. So, I don't know that we owe apologies to anybody. Neo's insisting that you apologize
just
to
the one line. That one line was, in fact, wrong, right? I said they're not going to go. I think it was when the Rangers went up 2-1 or one of the games.
Do you want to apply that now to Tua Tagovailoa?
See, I've loved Tua.
That the Dolphins will never win a championship. Who can you put the onus on? Who can you just go ahead and put a sign on their ass that they're not going to do it?
Oh, it's Greer, right? It's not McDaniel, and McDaniel's coaching decisions are horrendous. It's Greer. I don't like Greer. I don't think he's good at his job. I think he's the opposite of Zito. Everything he does sucks, and even the moves he does at work, like people are seeing, like getting a Tyreek Hill and making him your focal point of your offense is fun, and then you lose every fucking January.
You also get the feeling with Greer, Lubie, that and he's not the sole and final authority.
Yeah, but who is? Because it's not.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, the Dolphins have always been weird like that since Shula was essentially the main guy, but it seems like they capitulate to a conundrum, a collection of other people that we have no idea who they are or what their agenda is.
I don't blame it.
And that Chris Greer has to just take the fall for the bad moves that other people are suggesting, including some of the moves that he would have made on his own. But you do sense that Zito is the final authority on this stuff.
Yes.
Vinny Viola doesn't have a council of people that are yelling in his ear, "Hey, this guy's crazy." And look, they gave him the authority to pull off one of the great deals in sports history. This was like Lou Brock for Ernie Broglio, where it turned out to be totally one-sided. You hear nothing about Jonathan Huberdeau anymore. And there was, I believe, in either a prominent winger or a defenseman of some significance that was also involved in that deal. But while Tkachuk didn't have a brilliant final series,
no, he didn't.
He did have one of the signature plays that we'll remember in sports history, with that tip away of the puck that was about to go into the empty net. And even though it turned out to be insignificant, the significance of the effort at the time could not be lost on anybody.
Yep.
And probably was the embodiment of what competing for the Stanley Cup is all about. Just terrific. I hope people got turned on by it here in South Florida. I really do.
Well, last night's game was nuts. It's annoying because I feel like if I went out somewhere, I could have actually got my wife into that game.
Yeah.
Because it was that exciting, but I was such a lunatic.
Mustang was watching it. Skippy Dog was watching it. He's not a hockey fan.
Watched with me and was howling, and I've never seen my husky howl. When he started howling with me. She was in the room and just was.
Generally, Skippy only likes to watch videos of dogs surfing. where the dog is on the front of a surfboard, which I find like incredibly dangerous for the dog and the surfer.
It's not safe.
But somehow people do it. I mean, it's one thing; it's a little rinky-dink wave, and the dog is 2 feet from the shore. But I was watching them. Where is it? Portugal, where the waves are like 100 feet.
Okay, probably.
Some guy's got a dog on the edge of the surfboard there. They're thinking this guy should be arrested before he even gets out to the first set of waves. Get the fuck out of here. What are you talking about? But a great run all the way through. I think it leaves us in a pretty good place because you feel very comfortable about this particular franchise. Many people are feeling comfort about the Miami Dolphins and what they're doing, although I'm not as confident as others are in this year's edition of the Fins.
But the issue he just speaks of, which is why he's not confident in them, is my concern. It's health. I mean, everyone is hurt on that team all the time. So.
Yeah, I'm sort of I really don't like these kind of lines of thought. To be part of the so-called narrative of a show, but where people, it was big at this. The Big O was always doing that. Orlando Alzagari, where he would say, they'll never do nothing with this guy. And I don't know that I really like diving into that, but I'm not sure that the Dolphins win a championship, even though they're about to unload a wad of cash on Tua Tagovailoa, because they really, I don't know that they have any other choice but to go ahead and take a shot on it. And he's probably going to get paid by somebody. But, I mean, if you were another team and you were going to spend $50 million on a quarterback, I guess you could say, well, look, somebody's doing it on Kirk Cousins.
Yes.
Or they're doing it on Justin Herbert, or they're doing it on Trevor Lawrence, all of whom have maybe, with the exception, has Cousins achieved more than Tua Tagovailoa as an NFL quarterback? Possibly.
I think he has a playoff win, maybe. Look, it's the fact that he doesn't have a playoff win, and Lawrence, didn't they go to the AFC Championship 2 years ago?
Yeah.
That's sort of, I guess he did that, but then he fell totally off last year. Look, I don't know. You know how I feel about Tua, so I'm the wrong person to talk to.
I'm of the belief that I don't think he is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I just don't.
Yeah, no, I believe him.
I mean, he may win one, but I don't know that he is going to be the most important impetus behind. I mean, he would have to be vital, obviously. Quarterback's going to be, but I don't know that he is one of those guys that can carry you to that. Whereas you're expecting a goaltender to be in that category. Marlins, you figure, are dead in the water for a long time.
And they're a disaster.
And the Heat usually find a way to come back into the picture.
I think they'll find a way.
I'm not sure that they do right now, but I don't know what the answer is there. So that you would have to, and the Hurricane football team, do we still count them? Is it like a big five here? With Mario Cristobal, is it fair to say, are you safe in saying that they'll never win a national championship?
Oh, yeah. I don't think they'll win a
Cristobal.
I'm focused on him winning 8 to 10 games. I mean, I don't see him winning a championship. But, I mean, if he can get to 8 to 10 wins, then he can keep his job for that 8-year contract. Or is it 10 years? I don't know if he's making 10 years, but look, Sarni would like to remind me that your favorite, the MLS team, I guess, has a chance to win a championship. I don't
really count that among the major sports with this bullshit messy acquisition, because essentially it's a minor league where they went out and copped one of the world's, I mean, maybe the best player in the world, a couple of years ago and close to it. But far and above, this guy does not belong in the MLS, does he? Maybe in the next couple of years he might, an aging Messi. But I mean, it's a man among boys. It really is a joke to consider that. I'm not sure it's of that stature yet. Maybe for Jim Sarni, look, if you love it, that's great. But I don't know that people in town are thinking, well, geez, the MLS team is going to win a championship here. That's going to be something to celebrate. I guess it would be for the suckers that are out there paying money to see an aging Messi play at Lockhart Stadium or whatever it's called now, the Pink. Not sure. But very, very heartening. A lot of great stories. You couldn't help but love these guys. You would like to get to know more about them. I hope they don't get forgotten. After the parade, which I would imagine will be sometime, next week?
They've announced it's Sunday, which is fucking great.
Yeah.
It was the mayor of Fort Lauderdale, so I guess it is going to be in Fort Lauderdale, even though people are joking. I think it should be a section through Sawgrass. Like, that's not a joke. Like, this is, I don't care what anyone says. As someone who's born.
Shouldn't Sunrise own this team? There was a lot of conversation about how they did nothing, that if you were driving in an arena, it didn't look any different than the roads leading to the arena, and that you didn't see a lot of billboards or signage or
Like, we're
anything
suburban. It's
to
annoying
acknowledge what was going on.
how suburban we are. 'Cause
Yeah.
last night I was going through my neighborhood expecting people to be cheering and celebrating, and everyone was fucking asleep because it was like 11 something. And look, it's in the middle of the suburbs, but that arena is in Sunrise. Sawgrass is Sunrise's claim to fame. I don't know how you don't do something in Sawgrass. Like I people were joking, but I was like, "Fuck you!" Like there.
1 hour of a free supermarket sweep type of
I
thing.
just meant like
Just go into any store and loot it.
There you go.
Was there any looting? No fires started? I mean, we were a very decent bunch of people here in South Florida, are we not? I didn't see any cars being turned over, no cops being, attacked. So that part of it was good. I didn't hear of any crazy acts of violence erupting after the Panthers won the championship. So a somewhat subdued South Florida in that regard actually was a good development. So that was great too. All right, so parade Sunday, Lubie. Will you be attending the parade?
Yes, I'm going to the parade for
You're
sure.
actually going? All right, good for you.
I went to both.
Will you boo Bobrovsky? You got lucky, Bob.
I don't dislike Bobrovsky. I am frustrated by him. I still think they should go get another goalie. I think this was his swan song. Like,
would you have fired a ham sandwich at the team if they had a parade had they lost?
No, you're not going to do the people parade.
That's being widely. That's not even being debated. Apparently, that whole story is a myth.
They should have been celebrated still because they did get close. But if you lose, period, you shouldn't do a parade. But if you lose like that, no, there should not have been a. You can do a celebration at the airport, kind of a thing. I don't know. Do a night where you. Yay, okay. But a parade where people are in the streets and they're getting annihilated and they're there for hours and you don't know how much you may get robbed, like that kind of a fucking thing because there's so many people there. That should only be for a win. That would be lame as fuck to do that.
They deserve whatever acknowledgement they get for this, and hopefully the story will continue. In the years that ensue here, and they won't go back to being. Fueled by years of sub mediocrity, like we saw here for so many seasons with the Florida Panthers. All right, good stuff all the way around, Lubie. It's okay to be wrong that the Panthers would never win without Bobrovsky, but I'm not going to hold you accountable to that because you sincerely believe that.
No, I was right. I wasn't right with that exact comment. I was not right, but every other thing I said about Bobrovsky's play was I was scared about the stupid goals because I knew if a team was just patient and shot high enough, they would get to him. And that's literally what the Oilers did for 3 games.
Anything off the ice was going by him.
Like I was right.
Even the goal they got on the breakaway. I mean, he got a glove on the thing, but it was waist high. And sure enough, right in the center of the net. Well, actually, kind of tipped in. He almost made that save.
He stopped it.
Yeah.
Like that's what's annoying about how bad he was on those breakaways. He actually got a piece of it and it still went in.
Pretty amazing, yeah. How they didn't score in the tail end of that third period is beyond imagination. All right, we have to run. We will see you guys tomorrow. Well, later on today. Now that's Bubbles and Pearls. Is that the name of the place?
Pearls and Wilton Manors.
Wilton Manors, okay.
Doing
the pizza judging contest.
The pizza judging contest,
which is hard to embrace for me. I think you could go and do this by city or town in South Florida. And it would be hard to identify the best pizza in any given area, much less the entire area.
The fact that they didn't separate Broward, Palm Beach, Miami the whole thing was weird. I don't know why they look. I get it. Every single one.
And what's the criteria for judging? Closest to New York style?
I don't know.
Overall taste and presentation?
It's probably taste. It's probably because they're just doing cheese.
And it's hard to include these new, what are they called? Artisan pizzas? Is that it? Where, the guy's making a small pie, kind of like what Reno does or some of these other restaurants.
Yeah, like creative.
I mean, it's all great. And it's all pizza, but
it's different.
Really,
it's all different.
It's not like conventional. I'm assuming that's what people are talking about.
I don't know.
With the best pizza. Because you don't really flock to get like a margarita pizza somewhere and count that. You're thinking of pizzas being like a big round thing with cheese.
Yes.
So, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. At least we know we're going to be eating 5 bites of pizza sometime later on today. So that'll be happening about 1:00 today. And I actually would be more inclined to just want to go to Bubbles and Pearls because I've heard so many good things about it.
Yeah, I don't know if they should. I don't know if they're open or not, but I know we will be there. So
Okay, all right. Well, that'll be kind of interesting. All right, so we'll see you at 1:00 today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate it. We're all over the place today here, but we're in a great celebration of the Florida Panthers winning the championship and not choking. And we didn't have to talk about choking. We didn't have to come up with more choking references. And I'm sorry for all the conversation. Might have been in poor taste about Mama Cass. But nonetheless, and in great dispute. Neil, in fact, is on here saying, look, that's not the way it went down. Mayo confirming it. He would know, right? He's a food guy.
Yes.
If this woman, but for years, and to this day, I still believe that's the way she. You're thinking, what is it? Michelle Phillips was the hot blonde in the band there. She couldn't do a little CPR on this woman. Just watching her. Hey, mama, take another bite. What the fuck? All right, no more choking references on the program today. As we'll see you tomorrow. As we leave, you know that.
Fuck yeah, cats.
The time.
Did it not? It's 9:03.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my show.